So, I'm Aaron Frost from English 100J, Drake Gossi, Fall 2018. This is my screenshot video. The goal of this video is to go through three papers, my three major papers: the Island Revision, um, my response to a scholarly article, and my writing experience. And hidden these SOLs. These SOLs are core objectives that we had throughout the class that we had to learn and make sure that we understood. So, with that all being said, I'm gonna go through my writing experience. So, before I begin with the writing experience, this writing experience was a personal thing, and so it's not as doesn't have as much sources as it would if it was like a response. So my main source will be me. So hitting this first, writing or argument focused on a specific purpose. So my purpose was to first. The purpose comes from the prompt. The prompt asked me to think back what was the most memorable piece of writing you've ever done. Now, what was the situation and how did the situation help shape the writing? In a 4 to 5 page rhetorical analysis of memorable experience, I need to reflect. Reflect is the main word of this prompt on how that particular writing experience was a result of the particular situation. It was related to how the situation helped determine what you wrote and why. So this whole first thing is very important because it's like if you break this down, it's actually asking you to like give a writing experience and tell how you learned from it. Um, that's where the reflect comes into, and looking into the situation and how it affect your writing. And that's like my definition of rhetorical analysis. And so, going back to the paper now, I need to show how I reflected and how I need to first set up my situation, set up my audience, and set up my purpose. So, in the first paragraph, I want to do this by introducing it. I'm kind of real blunt with this one, so I say the point of this main of the writing is to create a rhetorical analysis of the prompt that we were given, and that's pretty much what I like broke down the prompt and gave my idea of how like I understood the prompt, and so um, so I broke it down, and at the end of the first paragraph, I talk about the class because that's like a personal experience of my writing, so I used it. And so in class, we talked about the triangle and how the triangle of rhetorical analysis is the audience, the situation, and the purpose. And the purpose of like a writing is not like, oh, I was just here to show you what 2 plus 2 is. No, it's like to show you like 2 plus 2 is this because of this and this and this. So it's like the purpose is not just like what your main um, main argument was. It's like what is the paper doing? That's what Drake always said. So right here, I'm setting my guideline right here at the last sentence. I want to say after I explain my writing experience, I will go over the purpose, situation, and audience. So by doing that, I hit the prompts when it was asking the situation. I hit the situation and the purpose and the audience, and that sets me up. So I first start off with my personal experience. So the personal experience was my senior year. I was being recruited by Nevada. It was very late, and I had an academic problem. Um, so my grades weren't as good to get into the college, and so I had to keep on taking these SATs and AZTs. I talk about how the grade point average was important to the college and how they really was like you had to get this grade point average or you had to score a high enough point on the SAT or um, the ACT. I talk about the struggles that I had throughout school because like my first 2 years I really didn't take school seriously. Um, right now I'm just setting up the situation, just telling you like how this paper became the way it was and how I was supposed to look at it. So right here, this is when the situation is created. This is when the university called me and said I needed to write an essay. So before this, I had to really try super hard in school and get a 3.0. It's kind of crazy that 3.0 is kind of hard for me, but they said I needed to write an essay to get a special admit to the university. So the essay, um, my before I talk about the essay, I'm still setting up the situation. The situation. So I just came from like the greatest school-wise semester that I've ever had, and I really worked really hard on it, and I felt like I was like done with everything, and they gave me this essay, and um, I really didn't feel like doing it, so I took it lightly. Um, but you'll see how I like adjust after they talk to me. So, looking at the audience of the university, of the paper, the audience was the University of Nevada and the people who were taking a risk on me. So that was like the council because of my grades. I kind of had to like prove myself. Right here it says, prove to them that my grades wouldn't be a problem and then that I would be able to handle college without dropping out because they're giving me like a full ride scholarship. So again, I'm looking at the audience and how they like see this paper, and I'm reflecting right here even more because they asked for me to reflect. So I'm saying, thinking back on this, in the beginning, I had like no idea how much one essay was worth until now. Now that the school is ever. So going back to the audience and their and how they're thinking, because that's how I want to like see the audience. I want to be able to see what they're not see, but like understand what they're thinking, and then like fit my essay to what they're thinking. So going in with that, the main problem they saw is that a student, as a student, I wasn't able to handle keeping up my grades. I was only barely making it as it was. They needed a reason to see if I was able to come for school and play football and would be, and my grades would not be a problem. Of so I'm like, so I'm still just breaking down like their thoughts and how they see this paper, because by doing that, I'm able to get what they want, because this is like they need a reason for me to come to the school. So after like analyzing um, the audience, I go into my purpose, which I said I was going to do at the beginning. I was going to break down the audience, the purpose, and situation. So the situation was done first by telling you that I had bad grades, telling you who I was writing to, what they were looking for, and how I thought about attacking this essay and how I felt about the essay. Then I went into the audience and talked about how how they see this essay and how it would affect me, and yeah. And then now I'm going into my purpose. So the purpose of this writing was at first to get accepted by the university, but after reflecting on the writing, I now see it was to prove to the university that I was the right choice for the job being the scholarship. So, so the purpose was to show that I, as a student athlete, will be able to go through college, get the good grades, and really help out the university, because they're taking like a huge chance on me, um, because I'm being a special admit, and if I don't make it next year, people would not be able to have the same chances I had. Um, so that's my purpose. Um, and so I at first I wrote. Now I'm talking about how I wrote my first paper, and how I just talked about how good of a football player I am, and how my grades were all right, and I'm like a really good football player, and you don't have to worry about the grades. But then like after talking to this director of the football, um, he really changed my mind on how I should like write the paper, and so he tells me that that because well, before I talk about how I should write the paper, the man who told me this was has been doing this for years, and so he knows, like, he has knowledge that I don't have, and he like tells me that um, to write this essay, you should probably talk about because he saw like this trend in my grades, where like every year my grades were getting better and better and better, and so I wanted to show that in my paper, show that my grades kept on getting better and better and better. And as like the years went on, the classes got harder and my grades only got better. And just show that I was ready for like the college workload and like the difficulty of the college workload. Um, so um, so right here in my conclusion, I'm telling you all about the help from the academic advisor and how I was able to write the paper and show that I was able to handle the grade load. I mean, the difficulty of college, and yeah, that's it. And showing that how, because my lack of knowledge of the situation, I almost did not make it into the university, but because of the academic advisor's knowledge, I was able to use his and borrow it and get accepted to the university. And so that was my first paper. Going through the SOLs, making sure I get them. So it says write an argument focused on a specific purpose. The purpose was to show my understanding of the prompt and to like find a writing style to go with it. So I did it by breaking down a rhetorical analysis and reflecting. So I kept on using words like um, I finally understood. Just talking about how I just got better throughout the writing, throughout the situation. I mean, the writing the situation. The second one that says write an argument that anticipates the needs of different readers. So I do this by making it simple. Like in class, Drake, you always said you have to treat the reader as like kind of retarded and they don't know anything. And so I just break down everything and just make sure they understand like what I'm saying by going into detail of what I say. So that makes any reader able to read it. And then the third one says to recognize the differences among kinds of writing situations and to be able to respond, the reproduce the conversation associated with this specific situation when the argument to address it. So as I read that, I think of just thinking about the prompt and hitting everything that I believe that the prompt was asking and just writing the paper to fit the prompt. Um, the fourth one says to compose knowledge from very reliable sources, including personal experience when writing an argument. So the personal experiences was the main focus of this writing because hidden needs it's a personal personal writing experience, and so I talk about my struggles in high school and um, and how they affected my writing. Um, Demonstrate critical reading skills when applying analyzing discussion. That was really hard for me to do with this type of writing because it was just all personal. So I really didn't really focus on that. I just I really didn't use it at all, really. But if you read the prompt and you go over the paper, you'll see why I couldn't use this SLL in the paper. Um, Develop standards of good writing by which students can evaluate their own or and classmates' essays during revision. So that's like pretty much saying like how I do that is I give each of my each of my paragraphs a purpose, and um, if I feel like that purpose isn't hit or is like irrelevant in the essay, I'll like take it out. And so like I end every sentence like of every paragraph. I end every paragraph with a sentence to tell you like what my purpose was. And so like the students can be like, okay, this is what he's trying to do. How well does he does it? How well does he do it in his writing? And that gives them a opportunity to analyze my writing, um, to see if I did a good job. So use productive strategy for organizing, revising, and editing. So like I said, I use the method of leaving my sentence and seeing if it hits the purpose that I set out for it, and seeing how well it does. And I found this a big help because you want your essay to flow well, and so you want to have like everything connecting. And so by giving each like paragraph its own purpose and looking at it as a whole and making sure like you set out like, because as you say in class, you set out like a contract in your first essay, and you need to make sure you do that. And so I like look for the essays that like really hit my contract, which is like purpose, situation, and audience. And then I use those and I really focus on those paragraphs, and that allows us to get a better understanding of the writing. And yep. Okay. Now that we're done with this one, I'm going to go into my second article, which is a review of a scholarly article, rhetorical analysis of a scholarly article. And so, looking back at this one, you want to go to the syllabus again, and I want to look at the rhetorical summary of a scholarly article. So, looking at the prompt. So, as a college writer, you need to make rhetorical reading completely natural. To read texts rhetorically is to read them as if they are people talking to you. People with motivations that may also exploit, but always present. It means talking about not only what the text says, but what the text means, or what the text means, but what the text does. Like, that's exactly what I said in the last paper. So this is we had a choice from four scholarly articles. I chose this one because it talks about student athletes, and I'm a student athlete, and I can relate to this one, so I felt like I have a better understanding with this one. And so let's go back to the SOLs. Okay. And so giving background on this paper, this is this paper is mainly about how student athletes, um, because of their name, they're not able to have such power in the way that they are seen, or like um, how they don't have any real power in the grand scheme of everything. And this is unfair because they're the ones on the field making the money and doing everything, doing like the hard work. And this guy named Reifenberg wants to talk about that. And so going into my essay, it says in the I'm just giving like a simple thing. I'm trying to like introduce Reifenberg's purpose by because I want to do this because it's my main point of my argument. And so when you get his purpose, I want to put his purpose into your mind. So when you're reading my essay, you can like compare. Um, you can compare his main purpose, and then like this is important because um, Reifenberg uses a lot of quotes, and with and then like hidden what the prompt said. You want to treat him as like he's talking. So I was like, I'm pretending like I'm talking to Reifenberg, and I'm seeing like, man, I really don't understand you, man. You're just saying all these quotes, and I'm not like getting an idea of what you're saying. And so like, I want to like talk to him and tell the readers what's like the best way of understanding Reifenberg um, using my like strategy. So I set up my strategy. This is like my contract. So the best way is to start to look at the quotes um, and just like you want to look at the quotes and use them. You want to look at the quotes and use um, um, look at the quotes and see like how important they are to Reifenberg. I do this by seeing how much time he spent on the quote, and like time, I mean like space, and like looking at the positioning of the quotes. Like if it's like close to a conclusion, that means it's really important because he wants you to keep that in mind going into the conclusion. I talk about that later. Um, so what I did, I went through the paper looking at the quotes, and I went through each author and looking at like where they were situated in the essay, and how much space they took up. And in doing that, I found that like two two major authors were really influential for Reifenberg. And that was um, is I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I'm gonna try Bernini, Borndine, and her name was Sheer, and they both had like their own thoughts of the naming of not the naming precisely, but um, they all had their own thoughts of the student athletes. So right here, my paper is heavily quoted because I'm using the quotes that Reifenberg uses. Um, so that's why I have a lot of quotes. So right here, I talk about Bourdieu and his importance to Reifenberg, because if you understand the importance of the quote and you relate it to the main point of Reifenberg, which I said in like the first one, you get like a huge understanding of what he's trying to like do for this essay. So Bourdieu is like the, I guess, more radical um, thoughts of Reifenberg. Um, he talks about how a name tells a person how she or he should act. Employees can allow collective bargaining power. Student athletes, despite the um, obtain a rhetorical move of uniting classrooms and athletic fields through an umbrella term, cast a passive receiver of America's higher education imposing structure. So he's saying that the NCAA is using the name student athlete to like kind of mold the players into the way that they want them to be seen. So like with the name student athlete, it comes with certain responsibilities and like certain ways you should act throughout the like in school. And this is, he says, it's unfair because um he says it's unfair um, because these people didn't ask. Because you're taking away like the people's right to like be their own person, and you're just making them mold into like what you want because you have all the power. And he finds that unfair for the student athletes, and he wanted to tell that. And then going back to like my contract, I want to relate it back to Reifenberg's main idea. So Reifenberg's main idea, if I don't think I said it, so right here he says this is quoted in his conclusion. I conclude by blending rhetorical theories of naming with scholarship, kinesiology, legal structure, markable. It says this tool denies a person room for political action and forces the embodiment of a marketable image created in the best image for the NCAA and higher education. So it's like the NCAA is like, I guess, like your boss, and they want you to have certain ways to act, and he feels like that's not necessary for the NCAA, and that they take advantage of the student athletes. And I will later go on to talk about that um, in my conclusion. So the going through the sources again. The next source is a comparison. So this is kind of like crazy because I find this like sort of true. So this guy William compares college landscape to a plantation system where the this is quoted from him, where the dominant group, i.e., white whites, um, gain wealth through the labor of marginalized marginalized groups, i.e., blacks. Why my focus is not to threaten throughout the fabric of colleges, sports, and higher education in general. Future attention to how so directly consider how rhetorical inequality follows this subjection. So he's saying like the colleges are like the white people back in the plantation days, where they were the farmer and it's like that movie Animal Farm. I'm not sure if I should like refer like to Animal Farm, but like in the movie, there were like these animals who and the farmer, and so like the animals will do all the work, plow all the yards, lay all the eggs, and the farmer he would just each and every morning he would just come and like take the crops that they farmed, um, took the eggs that the chickens that the chickens gave, and saying like how the farmer isn't really working for anything and he's just taken away from like the farm as a whole. And so he's comparing this to the NCAA and how the colleges are just taking all our it's just taking all of our all of our I'm sorry I have these long pauses. It's hard to get my thoughts together. How the colleges are using us to get money from the games that we play in and we put our bodies on the line for, and how they sit back and profit off of it, and they give us a small percentage of like what they get. And I say that after that. Um, and then I relate it to like how in my Pop Warner days, in like my no, like in my high school days, um, you can see like the people who were playing football didn't have anything, like the program, our football programs didn't have anything. But if you looked at like our sponsors and like the people who played for our stuff, they had like all the other stuff. They had like they kept on making more money off of us, and we weren't able to gain any money from them because they had all the power because of the way it was set up. Um, and then going back to my strategy again of um, going back into Reifenberg's main point, this really hits his where it says uh, this tool denies no, enforces embodiment of a marketable image created in the best interest of the NCAA. So that hits that part where you're not able to have your own image and you're just seen as like a student athlete, and it's like unfair for us. as student athletes to be just because we play football, we should be acting this way. And like, we're all different people. So, continue on. Right here, this is another quote. Again, I'm looking at like the importance of it for Reifenberg. And so, because he put it so close to the conclusion, I think it's really important to him because the conclusion is like where you got to get everything out, and right before that, you want to like end your argument so you can like review and talk about like what you did. So he says to be well. He doesn't say he quotes it from someone else. To be black and labeled student athlete within this plantation system means something entirely different than to be white or Latino student athletes within this same system. So again, it's like the it's just like the movie Animal Farm. Um, it's everybody's equal, but some people are more equal than others, and so that's what it's like saying. He's saying that the black people, because we're named student athletes, it gives them like the, I want to say, it deceits us and makes us think like we all are like the same, but it's not true. Um, I believe he states that in the article and says that that the blacks make up, like for the colleges, the blacks are a small percentage in the college, but on the football team and the student and like on the football team and all that, they're like a high percentage. So going into the last quote, it's from this girl named Sheer. She was mentioned in three different sections of the article. First, throughout the situation of rhetorical analysis, she pretty much gets a whole. So she gets a whole paragraph to herself, and this is what she has to. She talks about the main point of that paragraph was to talk about collective identification of a grouping, of the grouping. The name, the naming of the group showed everyone what they want to do and how they wanted to do it by using the name Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. Um, so when so Reifenberg, so going back to my same thing where I got my contract, I relate this to Reifenberg's main point, and he uses this as like how serious collective identification of a group is, because I'll go later on to like what happened to her. So C is mentioned again, this time with Reifenberg with his own input. So one issue to have is a student athlete does not allow for political action within America higher education or on end of the labor spectrum in faculty and staff. The employees are often the other. So it's saying like because we are named student athletes, we have no power, and we are underneath everyone, and it shouldn't be that way because of our name. We should be given the same treatment as anyone else. That's what she is used for Reifenberg. So just going into my conclusion, after hitting all these um, hitting all these quotes that he used in his essay and relating it back to his main idea, um, you can see that, excuse me, um, that he sees the NCAA as like treating their student athletes unfairly because of the tradition that they built so long ago, where they where the where the name student athlete puts a barrier over the students and doesn't allow them to be themselves. Then I kind of give my own point of view in saying that it all came from money, and they wanted to make sure that they had like their thumb pressed against the student athletes because they wanted to keep the money for themselves, and they became very greedy. The NCAA was, because they were making so much money off the people on the field doing the work, and it was an easy way for them to get money. Um, I compare it again to the plantation quote because I really like that one because it kind of made sense. So then I finally hit my conclusion, my last sentence, and that's like I said in the last one. The last sentence always tells you what was like the main purpose of the article, and it was to go through the quotes and get straight to what Reifenberg was thinking just by breaking down the quote and giving it meaning to Reifenberg. And so that gave me what Reifenberg was saying, in that the NCAA is taking advantage of student athletes by giving them the name student athletes and reaping the rewards without the labor on the field, and just using the name to keep them from gaining any of the money that they get from the events that we do. Okay, so this is my last one. This is the response to the island research. And so this is a revision study. So going to the prompt to the revision study. Hold on. So the revision study was we were given a prompt and we were told to answer it, but that was not the main point. The main point of the revision study was to hit these 4 points: was the draft, the rewriting according to genre, format, audience, and coming up with a plan, etc. Checking each part for function in terms of a part as a whole, and editing. So I did this by first doing my draft. So in my draft, I was very vague. I just read the prompt and I gave like my answer right away and got everything out that I wanted to say. There's a lot of grammar errors here. There's no real structure to it. I'm just like reading the prompt and writing what I feel. Um, and like I get to like the end, and now I'm ready to like rewrite this. So I leave this open and I start a new document and I read over everything that I wrote and I start to build my own structure. And so the structure that I built for myself was that I wanted to. My main problem with this, I want to say prompt, was that it was not enough information given for me to understand the way that they came to their conclusion, and I really wanted to like because we are always taught that you want to show what your purpose, what your main, what your conclusion is. You just don't want to tell them, and I felt like they just told us just to like get it over with. And so I want to talk about that. So first, I want to start off by going over the prompt. This is how I build my structure. So the structure is going over the prompt, showing like the lack of evidence for their conclusion, and like show how it can be confusing for the reader. And then I want to give them the answer, not the answer, but the question. I want to give them questions that, if answered, would make it less confusing and show us how 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 it could be more detailed in why they got their conclusion. So my structure is summary, um, thesis. So I'm gonna tell you what I want from what I'm gonna write about. Then I'm gonna give question, possible answer, and disadvantages and advantages of the question that I asked. And then I'm gonna do that same thing like 2 or 3 times. And then at the end, I wanna like at the end I wanna give like a response to the I want to give a response to the main problem that I talked about in the beginning, and reinstate that and get it back inside your head, and then give you the answer that I had gotten from the questions, and show more clearly in the prompt. So I'm just like making the prompt better, and showing you how the prompt could have been a whole lot better, and you would have been able to came to your own conclusion. And so that's the type of structure that I had in the format. And so I want to the next step, and after rewriting and getting the genre and the structure, and coming up with my plan. I want to check each part for function in terms of part as a whole. And so what it's asking is that like you set yourself up with this you set this up you set yourself up with this plan. How did I follow through with it? So I did so by so the main plan was to give questions that would make the prompt more easy to comprehend and understand. So I look at my first paragraph and I talk about um, how was the research conducted. Um, so the research was conducted. Knowing how the research was conducted, we would be able to have a better understanding of who the people that they interviewed and how they got their conclusion, and make little connections in our head on how they came to that conclusion. Um, and then I talk about the interviews first and talk about who he interviewed and like what they did. Then I went into the observations and I talk about how were the observations conducted, and try to see, because like the main point of this paper was that these two doctors went to the same island in the same village, and came back with like and did some research and came back with different conclusions, two totally different conclusions. And one of the doctors told them that they were wrong, and then after he told them they were wrong, his fellow doctors agreed with him and told him that yes, he was wrong. And I was all like, and then I had the problem with how they said that he was wrong, but like each paragraph is like trying to see how he was wrong and like why they didn't like his recommendation of the observations method of a research. And so I do that. And so finally editing is just like going through your paper and fixing the grammar errors and um, just making sure you hit everything that you needed. And so like we're at like the hour mark, and I feel like this has gone on for like too long. And so that was my screenshot video. Thank you.